So, hey guys, today we're going to be talking about hand traps, and I don't really mean pistols when I'm talking about hand traps in this case, but yeah, let's go over like all of the hand traps that we had around Master Duel release. So, we have Ash Blossom, we have Called by the Grave, we have Nibiru, we had Shifter at 3. No joke, Dimension Shifter was at 3. Wow, stun was so intolerable because they could play 3 shifter, and why wouldn't you? Really? Why not? And Maxi, honestly, I could care less. Like, Maxi's strength depends on the other cards in the game, not so much itself, right? So let's say you go to GOAT format with Maxi. I think the best that card does is Upstart. Yeah, pretty depressing, but alright. So focusing on mainly these type of cards here, with the exception of like Dimension Shifter, Nibiru, that where these cards are much farther, and yeah, you just don't really see that many cards with this much destructive power, honestly. And that there's some trade-offs with Nibiru and Shifter. So your best options for hand traps are going to typically be cards closer to like Effect Veiler, I guess. Ash Blossom, Imperm, it's mostly going to be these 3. These are kind of your best hand traps. But if we equate them to like the modern game, or right here, you know, like modern decks, as of like just 2025, if we just try trading, like Ryzeal's actually a bit too good at trading, so let's go back and find another deck, actually. So let's do, yeah, we'll go with like Mathmech, I guess. Actually, yeah, Mathmech, Cyberse, whatever. But we're not going to throw in Circular, okay? So we special summon a guy, we try to perform the search, yada yada, you know? So it'll be something probably like normal summon Lady Debug. We'll say attempt to add, we'll go with, yeah, Summon Grade, I guess. This is still kind of modern. It's got like support recently-ish. It's not like the best deck, but I believe the play is to add Gazelle. I think, if I can find Gazelle somewhere. Jaguar, nope. Gazelle. My blindness is really kicking in today, I guess. Fennec, Foxer, Raccoon, Jaguar. Aha, Gazelle. So add Gazelle, link off for, let's see. It should be the link 1, which is Phalanx, effect to add Sanctuary, link off Phalanx, for Phalanx triggers Gazelle. Gazelle grabs you Spinny, I think. Well, it sends the Spinny specifically. And then you can special summon Spinny, bring back like Mirage Thalio, etc., right? But let's go through this line in this way. So, normal summon Debug. This gets ashed or impermed, sure. Then your opponent Phalanx resolves. They have Gazelle in this case. So then just Gazelle effect, right? To special summon itself, and then effect to try to dump Spinny. You can try to effect failure this, and then they can just have Spinny, right? Already. So discard effect here, special summon Spinny, and then maybe they try to go Mirage Stallion. You could negate this as well with like another Imperm, failure, whatever. The thing here, if you can't tell, is like there wasn't really a super good choke point necessarily, right? because if you wait too long, your cards just do significantly less because of how these cards work in general, right? So let's look at this in terms of like end board, right? So we have Malice Dormouse. So you don't necessarily know your opponent's hand guaranteed, right? But if we have normal summon Dormouse, this can translate into like Appaloosa plus this thing, that thing, you know, just a bunch of different end board elements. But we drop Imperm, it's all gone. None of that shows up. But if our opponent has like other cards, then you could argue it would be better to actually use Infinite Impermanence or something like that to just deal with their end board, potentially. So in this case, if we Imperm Appaloosa, this could trade off several negates off of Appaloosa instead. But yeah, that's just the general idea here, where your hand traps are just kind of trading, and it feels like sometimes you're just comparing hands, right? Where it's like, okay, I try Ash, you have called by for that. Okay, I try Effect Failure goes through. But you have the other thing, you know, you have the search target you were going to grab anyways, so that Effect Failure didn't really matter. And then I dropped the other thing. You have that search target as well, essentially, or a way to ignore what I just did. And then hand traps just kind of feel pretty worthless in these instances. And it's kind of feeling that way for a while, you know, where you're when you choose to use your hand traps, like it always kind of matters, right? But even when you use it optimally, it's like, okay, my opponent just had the thing. There was nothing I could do about it. So it's like, it kind of feels like just comparing hands, where it's like, do I have the thing to stop their combo? I do not. I just lose outright because it drops down like 5-7 interactions, and I only have like 2 cards left in my hand after dropping all my hand traps. So yeah, it's completely a lost game. Because you're also playing like the equivalent of a Dormouse, I guess, where that now, like, if you had Imperm plus 1 other card, your opponent would only have to play into 2 interactions with maybe their Dormouse, right? But if we look at the equivalent where they have an end board instead of just hand traps, well, they will have hand traps as well, technically, but we don't even have to account for that. Your Dormouse, or equivalent of Dormouse, would have to play around like double the interruption, if not more, and also you're missing kind of cards in hand. So that sucks. We can even go further and assign like values to cards. Like we'll assign Dormouse maybe like a value of 0 during your opponent's turn and a value of maybe like 1 on your own turn, because Dormouse going second is considerably worse than going first because well, you have the opportunity to set up the interruptions with whatever your starter is, and this just applies to like every single combo deck ever, where you have like some starter or starters that translates into like way more interruptions. So this converts like 1 to 2 cards, for example, into maybe like 7 interruptions, let's say, and then your opponent still only has like 5-6 cards in hand or whatever. But if they went first, then the card you have does nothing, and it feels like we're really just doing some basic maths here. Like, do you have the card for this? I guess, you know? And the game is just over after the combo kind of resolves, I guess, because there's no real way to deal with the end board because the end board is just too solid, right? So you have ideas like Raigeki, which don't work because, like, this only trades off like 1 interaction sometimes now, if any at all. So, for example, against like Snake Eye, this wouldn't even trade off the Appaloosa because you usually IP into Appo, and then this would not really do anything because you have the idea of like Flamberge and Promethean Princess still triggering like both of those cards. So this genuinely does nothing, right? Against like Yubel and what that deck did, Raigeki also doesn't really do much. It trades for, let's see, the back row pop from the Unchained trap. That's all this trades for. It trades for like 1 card in the back. for like one interaction, I guess. It could also trade off Apollosa, so it's better than evenly matched actually, because evenly matched genuinely only trades for that. I think, right? Well, actually, no, you ruined Phantom with Yubel, so Raigeki might be a little bit better against Yubel specifically, but yeah. Wait, is Phantom of Yubel actually destructible by card effect? Not be destroyed by battle. No, it can be destroyed by card effect. Okay. So maybe like that would be better, but even board breakers just don't feel great because you just have more like layered interactions nowadays, so you can't really sack your opponent with just something. And there's nothing that trades well enough that can deal with these things. So for example, if we have like Malice on release, they're also drawing like 4 cards, I think, right? In their combo. Let's count. 1, 2. So you have Chessy Cat effect to draw. You have White Binder effect to draw, so that's draw 2, 3, and then draw with White Binder again on the next turn. Or 4 draws. And then like your actual end board. To probably draw into at least 1 to 2 hand traps. Probably 1 is reasonable to expect, at least 1. But like 2 isn't like that unlikely either, I guess. Because they have essentially a fresh new hand and they went through a bunch of engine cards, so that increases the likelihood of drawing technically into hand traps, yada yada, right? But it really feels at this point like if a combo resolves, the game is already over, and you just don't have that much you can do about it, and I think that's probably the biggest problem at the moment, aside from like the mess that is hand traps. And this doesn't even consider the issue of like hand traps being usable going first and going second, and then like some cards not being able to be used going first and going second. So yeah, going second is just being in a huge disadvantage, really. So with Nibiru, I guess there is like there was like a little bit of trade-off with Nibiru, but it's also like not that big of a deal. So with Nibiru, there was the idea of not wanting to run too many copies of Nibiru because you can blank your whole board with Nibiru yourself, right? You can just clear your own board. Like let's say you have Apollosa, Baron, Warlord Savage on your board or whatever. If you drop Nibiru, all of those monsters are gone, right? So like that'd be the downside of Nibiru. Shifter, your deck might not be able to play under Shifter. And at the start of Master Duel, there was like literally only 2 decks that could play under Shifter. So one of them was not played till much later. And aside from that, this was mostly just stun. And then like Flu dropped, and then we started seeing like Shifter getting hit, and then Kashtira dropped, and it was like definitely getting hit after that point, you know? But up until that point, like Shifter, pretty moderately useless card to an extent, surprisingly enough, because nothing could play that well under Shifter itself. But yeah, these cards. There's a good chance you just cook yourself with your own cards, and then the game just becomes completely unplayable. So, we have like ideas of doing full combo and then just having hand traps. So if we start with like just normal 7 Dormouse, this does go into the 4 draws and all that. So let's assume we go top deck into like effect failure on our opponent's turn with the White Binder, and we also draw into 3 infinite impermanents plus 1 effect failure. Then all of a sudden we're at like colossal like 5-6 interactions or something from our hand cards, essentially our hand traps, before we consider our engine cards. So it's basically like your opponent now has to deal with like 2 end boards worth of interaction because of hand traps here. Whereas if hand traps didn't exist, it would just be like what was it, like 5-6 or something interaction, which is a huge difference versus like the 12 maybe potential hand traps you have to deal with on top of like an end board. Very annoying, I guess. Worth mentioning would be like these cards as well. Like these exist also now, so you can activate this from hand. So even if you have like 5 macro being utilized, you can still drop this technically as well. And you know, Maxi isn't even a factor here. That's the thing. Like if you Maxi draw into Imperm, it doesn't really do anything, for example. Because well, not on the current turn, because you do control a card, so you can't activate Imperm from hand, but like with Impulse that would be a thing. But yeah, it just gets complicated, it gets muddy. And like HandTraps are a mess. The math on like how going first and going second, I think, is kind of a mess. So you have like this fairly unfair advantage in general, right? If you resolve your combo, but if you don't resolve your combo, then you just get run over unless your HandTraps are kind of like better than your opponent's engine pieces, I guess, or they're able to trade better, and your opponent can't do anything with their engine. That's kind of what we're just doing. The games right now, I feel like they're determined way too much by HandTraps, but also at the same time, like the combo pieces are so strong, we actually need HandTraps because like we can make combos that are so strong now that we have more interactions than the cards in our opponent's hands typically. So that's disgusting. But you kind of have to face like a mini kind of end board worth of interaction with all of these HandTraps as well. So no idea how to feel about this at this point in time, but yeah. It's not like there's no skill expression. I suppose like misplays are still a thing, right? This is assuming mostly with optimal play, which not everyone's going to be able to play optimally. For example, like maybe you were supposed to sequence with this particular hand your Mitsurugi cards first, and then your Raziel cards, or your Raziel into then the Mitsurugi cards. And your opponent actually sequenced wrong, and that they still lost, despite technically, if you look in hindsight, there was like a combo line that they could have played where technically there was no way you could have interacted with it in any meaningful way, and it's always a guaranteed loss when you're comparing like the two hands, I guess, right? So it's just frustrating, basically. So what are we looking at here, really? I mean, engine and HandTraps. There's also, I guess, the option, well, not option really, it's just the RNG factor of, do I open HandTraps plus this, or do I not? And one of the most frustrating elements of Yu-Gi-Oh! In general is just going to be just RNG elements. Everything you can't really control. It's pretty frustrating. So we'll just go ahead and just put in a bunch of cards here. So we'll just go in a bunch of vanillas, because why not vanillas? These are just going to be placeholder cards. So let's see. We'll do draw 5. And here, not a single hand trap. But how many hand traps do we run here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So with expectation of ratios here, I feel like we should expect to see 1 to 2 hand traps here. But we didn't see a single one. And even if we do see one, so yeah, let's see. Let's assume with this hand, there is actually nothing we can Ash Blossom, and then Infinite Impermanence is the only card we have live. So a deck like this would be, I guess, Sword Soul, right? So normal summon Moyi, it chain blocks Ash. There's nothing to really Ash Blossom that's meaningful. We can Imperm on Moyi, but our opponent has Cross Out, right? And this is even more, well, of an issue specifically around the start of Master Duel. Well, except for the fact that there was nothing that could just tank Ash Blossom until this point. And I believe they banned Crossout later. So that this is probably why Sword Soul felt so aggravating to play against with that format, because you would 3 cross out, so you have 3 infinite impermanents, but your opponent has like 3 cross out to just hit all of your imperms if you open multiple imperms. They can also technically cross out Effect Valor, and you specifically have to play these cards. And Ash Blossom does not work to stop the combo at all. It does not even hamper them. It does not even inconvenience them. It's so bad with Ash Blossom, but you're required to kind of play Ash Blossom for like Max E at this point in time, right? So that doesn't really work. And Nibiru could potentially not work as well because cross out, right? Then we do another hand test here. Didn't open a hand trap. Open 2 hand traps here. We open hand trap here, and then maybe we do open these hand traps, but we don't open engine. So we can't do anything with those cards. So like very high consistency honestly has made the game better. So in that one regard, I think Yu-Gi-Oh has improved mostly with like consistency. So let's think of just the random deck. Well, not all of them, because some of them have still player inconsistency issues. So I guess we can do Memento, right? So not necessarily all of these starters are going to be like insanely cracked, but you have a lot of actual genuinely 1-card starters in this deck, just in general. You have Normal Summon Anguish that you play at 3. Darkblade, which you also play at 3. You have Rhoda, Search, Darkblade, so we're at 7 now. And then we have 3 Tatsu no Toshiko. So we're at 9 1-card starters here. Not 9, actually 10, because Rhoda. And then Memento Lane Goblin. This is also a 1-card starter. You might play this at potentially 2 if you play that 1 Goblin quick play. Putting you at, we'll just say for now, 12. Well, there's technically also 1 for 1, putting us at 13 from this point. Like 13 or 12 1-card starters. Genuine 1-card starters to make just some sort of play, right? It doesn't have to be the best play, or maybe it is the best play. Like with Tatsu, I don't remember what this actually ends on anymore, but it gets you somewhere, right? If we were to just normal summon a Sleepy, does genuinely nothing. Yeah, you need another card to do things with certain cards, right? And then there's some cards you just can't normal summon or special summon at all, like Blind Creation, Akihiran. But yeah, with these cards, we drop them on the field. We have combo of some sort, right? At the very least. Kind of same thing with like Vanquish Soul, where if you normal summon Raizen, it does do something, but for like the combo, you at least need 1 more card. Typically, it should be like a fire card though. Dark would be all right, I guess, but yeah, you would prefer a fire card. So yeah, there's that idea as well, where consistency for decks have just improved across the board. So if we look at like Tri Brigade, that deck had like nothing in terms of 1-card combos, unless you throw in Tenki, which helps, I guess. But if we don't look at Tenki or like cards like Rhoda 1 for 1, if we don't look at cards like that, right? Well, how many 1-card stars do you have? You have exactly Fractal. And we're not even going to care what the board ends on here. You just have essentially 1 card right here being Fractal with like Memento. We have like versus your 3 1-card starters, we have like 9 or 10, 12, 11, whatever. More than triple the amount of consistency here, basically. I mean, unless you want to count Tenki, which technically there's only 1 Beast Warrior in this deck, right? Yeah, so there's still the idea of technically you try to resolve Fractal and then you just Ash the Fractal so that Tenki doesn't actually do anything. It's not even like a starter extender type deal, which the Memento cards also are sometimes starter extenders, notably like Tatsu no Toshiko, right? But yeah, this card right here, Fractal, it don't really do much, even with Tenki. If you were playing like specifically, I guess it would be Trilureless. The only you could have like 6 copies Fractal, right? But ain't gonna do anything. Well, not really by itself. And if you were to open like Fractal plus Tenki, it's like having 2 copies of Fractal in your hand, which does hot nothing. basically. So consistency going up, that's good at least. Combos getting more powerful, and also like the boards being more layered and harder to deal with, and then being more hand trap resistant. It feels like hand traps just are not keeping up at the moment. If they intend to replace hand traps, I guess this is kind of logical to do, to kind of phase out hand traps a little bit more and replace them with something new. But if they aren't doing that, this just seems like a throw in terms of like card design. I don't know. We're either in a transition period, or I don't know, the game designers have lost their minds, I guess. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.